Yeah.
About that.
It's showtime.
Welcome to the YATCast. This episode is about science and technology. But first, I would like to give thanks to all my real life and social media friends and others who forced me to delve deeper into things to find the underlying cause. They forced me to determine why things are or are not. They forced me to think about things in a way to see what could be or what cannot be. So, let's get started. In episode 15, I went over what science is. The very root of science is survival, and stems all the way back to the very first single-cell life on this planet. Go watch it to find out why. Today, there seems to be confusion and misunderstanding about science and technology. Granted, sometimes it can seem to be a bit blurry. Businesses tend to add to the confusion by purposely misusing these words. The difference isn't very hard to understand, and you should be able to do it rather easily after this episode. Let's start with the basics. The definition of science is the intellectual and practical activity encompassing the systematic study of the structure and behavior of the physical and natural world through observation and experiment. The definition of technology is the practical application of knowledge, especially in a particular area, a capability given by the practical application of knowledge. Science creates knowledge. Technology uses knowledge. With the exception of their very first scientific discovery, science and technology have fed off each other. So much so that today sometimes they seem inseparable. This can further the confusion. However, they can be teased apart so you can understand. Science uses technology to gain knowledge, which feeds technology, which feeds science. I'm going to use 3 examples to explain the difference between science and technology. I will discuss cell phones, arrows, and single-cell organisms. Cell phones are pure technology, but rely on massive amounts of science. While, if you so choose, you could trace it way back in history, I will stick with the major developments. The science involved includes how to generate electricity, store it, and use it. It includes how to transmit information wirelessly. It includes how to create transistors, both tubes and, more importantly, solid state. All of those and more go into the batteries, the wireless signal generation, the screens, being able to run apps, take and store photos, and so forth. This is a perfect example because the delineation is quite clear. Science is a process to discover knowledge, while technology is a physical thing that puts that knowledge to use. So, let's look at arrows. I'm not talking about the titanium or aluminum arrows in use today. I'm talking about arrows millennia ago. The ones that were painstakingly made by hand from wood. I'm not going to go into the science behind selecting the right wood for shape, size, and weight, or the working of it into the actual arrow. I'm going to get a little more esoteric. If any arrow hits something hard, the shaft can bend. This applies to titanium, aluminum, and wood. Wood is susceptible to moisture and can bend as it dries, or if one side gets wet and the other doesn't. There's a lot of time and effort that goes into making them, and to toss them aside if they get a little bent out of shape is a waste. Wood arrow shafts can be straightened, and there's a science behind how to do it. It starts with having the knowledge of how wood reacts to the moisture and heat. There's a science behind starting a fire or carrying a coal from place to place. The technology here rests in the tools used to make fire or the container that carries the coal. So, as far as the strengthening goes, what's the science? The science, or knowledge, comes in knowing how much water or heat to apply where, how much or how long to apply, when to apply it, and how much pressure to apply where and for how long. What about the technology? For this, you will need to relax your mind a bit as to what technology is. To straighten an arrow shaft, you have two choices for the technology to use. One is your hands, which could be quite painful, and the other is to use some sort of device. Remember, technology is the practical application of knowledge. It isn't necessarily some whiz-bang gizmo. Okay, but what about primordial single-cell life? We will never know exactly how single-cell organisms evolved to be either mobile or stationary. This is just my take on it. Take it for what you think it is worth. The earliest single-cell organisms were at the mercy of their environment. They were tossed about by waves and wind into random environments that were neutral, beneficial, or harmful. Some cells got caught on a snag or something like that. They would have used their limited intelligence to determine if they flexed a little bit, they might keep themselves from leaving a beneficial environment. Over time, this may have evolved into a pseudopod that they learned to not only hold on to something, but also to move a bit to find a more beneficial climate. Somewhere along the line, some found that if one pseudopod was good, then two were better. This goes for a while, but because of their small size, the pseudopods became smaller and smaller, and eventually became cilia that were better for locomotion. The cilia may then have enlarged in size and reduced in numbers until a flagellum was created. The original science would have been that they learned that getting snagged on something kept them in place. The technology would be the pseudopod that intentionally formed to grab onto something. Then science would have had them realize that the pseudopod could be used to move. I think you get the gist. Again, this last example is nothing but pure speculation, but seems fairly reasonable. Thank you for spending some time with me, and I'll see you at the next YATCast. Are you enjoying the YATCast? Be sure to like, share, and subscribe. And consider becoming a patron at patreon.com/YATCast. That's https://www.patreon.com/YATCast.